So let's talk a little bit about religious trauma syndrome.
Okay. Yeah. So what I want to try to get out to the public at this point in time, part of the reason I'm on here is talk about how does religion cause trauma, and I'm not talking about your run-of-the-mill mainstream Episcopalians or or Quakers or whatever. I mean, I'm talking about the main body of evangelicals, for example, or Islamic religions, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons. Those kinds of religions are incredibly restrictive, and as a result, they put ideas into people's heads that ultimately cause them problems in life, which then are explained by, well, that's the devil talking to you, or other things. And I'm here to say that religion causes traumatic experiences in children primarily. And when it does that, adults grow out of those children and become victims of a trauma that we now are calling religious trauma. Now, there's another term that I want to distinguish here today, and that's religious trauma syndrome. That's a little different. But to do that, I want to go back and just say, we all agree that there is such a thing as PTSD.
Right.
Nobody disagrees with that. But we used to disagree with it. Years ago, we called it shell shock, or we called it cowardice, or we called it battle fatigue in the war side of it. And we didn't recognize that it was a real neurological issue. And we said the same thing for years to women about rape trauma, that, well, it's all in your head. You should get over it, kind of bullshit. Well, the same thing has happened with religion. War and rape, we now understand, cause real neurological changes in people. We also need to acknowledge religion does the same thing. And unfortunately, war and sexual trauma can be wrapped up into religion, of course, for sure. So that's what that's kind of been my passion of recent. Right? And as a result of that, can I mention the conference that's coming up? Is this the time to do it? As a result of that, Dr. Marlene Winnell came out with a term about 10 years ago called religious trauma syndrome. And recently we decided this is a damn good idea to start talking about this out loud. And a woman, Janice Selby, a therapist up in Vancouver, has decided she's going to put on a conference on religious trauma.
Right.
And Secular Therapy Project is going to be one of the two main sponsors. Dr. Winnell's Journey Free organization and our organization, Secular Therapy Project, we are going to be talking out loud at the conference for 2 days about this. And our goal is to get this on the map. We know there's PTSD. What nobody wants to talk about is how does a religion screw up people's lives?
Yeah.
And we know this. You and I are both atheists. We see how much damage religion does. But the new thing, or the thing I think is unique, is we now have a label for it. Mm. And we've probably seen this. I saw this 30 years ago in my practice. I didn't know how to label it. Well, now I know how to label it. I know that when somebody comes to me complaining about fear of hell, I can't go to sleep at night because I wake up with fear of hell, I know that's probably religious trauma. I would not have called that name 20 years ago, but now I've got a name for it. As we know, if we can name something, then we can start doing something about it, or at least working on it. And that's why we're having the conference. And by the way, but whether we have a conference or not, I want people to start thinking in terms of religious trauma. Have you been affected by religion? And has it traumatized you in your sexuality, and your ability to have relationships with other people, your ability to sleep at night, your ability to have a social relationship? I mean, when you leave religion, that's when you're most likely to experience religious trauma, because your family will cut you off, your friends will cut you off, you might lose your job. I mean, there's a lot of things. You might have night terrors based on fear of hell. All those things can happen to somebody. And generally speaking, what we're calling religious trauma happens at the point you leave a religion. You may have been traumatized within the religion, but the religion doesn't let you know that. It's God. You need to pray hard to God, or it's Satan doing this to you. But the minute you step out of that bubble, that's when you have to deal with the real trauma that religion did to you, probably since childhood.
Yeah, it's probably one of the reasons, I was mentioning before the show, I mean, I don't suffer from PTSD or any kind of severe effects that I would associate with religious trauma. As a matter of fact, at the time that I found my way out of religion, it was far more freeing. It felt kind of liberating. but it's undeniable that my religious upbringing and the teachings that I was exposed to have had an impact on my life, and in many ways have had a negative impact on my life. Maybe mine isn't as severe as other people's. I don't know whether I would qualify as religious trauma or not, but the fact that there are things in my life which have been detrimentally impacted by religious teachings and the culture that you grow up in, it just means that I'm probably one of the luckier ones.
You are, right.
And you mentioned kind of an informal survey that you had recently done.
Yeah, we did a survey of all of our therapists in the Secular Therapy Project, and not everybody responded. But what we did get gave us some interesting information. What we asked them was, considering all of your client base, not just the ones that come through us, all of your client base, how many people come in with complaints related to religious abuse, like being beaten for having been caught masturbating, or being grounded because you didn't learn your Bible verses, or being shamed for your body, or being gay, or there's any number of things. And we listed it before. And we asked what percentage of your clients come in with those. We call them adverse childhood experiences related to religion.
Right.
Adverse childhood experiences related to religion. 36% of the clients coming in to the people that responded, 36% have those complaints.
Yeah.
That's a third of all the people that walk into any of our therapists' offices. That's a lot of people. Remember, we got 18,000, almost 19,000 clients. If you divide that by roughly a third, you've got 6,000 people with some kind of trauma related to religion.
And no matter what this is a AA survey, and not everybody responded and everything else. There are people out there who are going to be good at statistics and stuff, and they're going to say, "Oh, well, you're only surveying people who came in for counseling."
Yeah,
you're right. And the thing is, that doesn't mean that the number's inaccurate, or doesn't tell you which direction it's inaccurate, because how many other people have suffered for a long time because of religious trauma and don't actually come in for counseling.
Right.
Because religions, of the many things that religions have done that are gross disservice to people, setting up a scenario under which you are responsible for you and your thoughts, and psychology and counseling and these things. You don't need that. What you need is God, and you need Jesus. And they keep people mired in this stuff to where they're not going to actually seek out help and counseling.
Absolutely. I think it's probably an undercount, but I do want to understand. I'm not claiming this is scientific. It wasn't. But it is an interesting finding, and it probably is definitely an undercount, as I think you're pointing out. There's a lot of people out there walking around with these problems, and they don't identify them as psychological. They identify them as spiritual.
Yeah.
It's because I haven't prayed to God hard enough, and I can't have a good relationship with my partner because I haven't prayed to God hard enough. My marriage is falling apart. I need to pray harder. Well, no, your marriage is probably falling apart because you've got some crazy ideas about what relationships should be. Males should be over females, or you shouldn't have sex before marriage, or whatever. There's all sorts of crazy ideas.